From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. All right, we are joined today with Dr. Will Winter. Will, thanks for joining us. Long history with Acres USA.
I love this organization. Yeah, it's kind of like my home.
Well, that's good. Why don't you give us a little bit of background? And we're also joined with Mark Shepard too. He was kind enough to come over and.
Great. I feel smarter just sitting with all these books and you guys.
So what's some of your background?
Well, I was born at a young age, and no, I was raised in Kansas. My family are wheat farmers, monocropping. Wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat times 100. So I really didn't have a good taste for the farm country. So I went to college. I decided I was going to be a veterinarian, and I am. I graduated a million years ago, and it took me about 3 years to realize that my profession was kind of a hoax. I was not happy. I wasn't curing anything. That was my feeling. I feel like they'd probably gotten better without me. Certainly emergencies. That was where the action was. My first job was when the exotic cattle were coming over from Europe, and I was pulling calves day and night because they were breeding Chianins, Charolais, Simmentals to dumpy little Angus heifers, and they couldn't have the babies. It'd be a 120-pound calf inside. So I think I took the wrong career path because I was pulling calves every night or cutting them apart or doing C-sections. And I really wasn't sure I was in the right job. And I didn't realize this was just a bubble in time. And people started figuring out that was in Missouri. Came to Minnesota, and I was kind of, how you get like, I'm not sure I'm in the right position in my career. So I tried a bunch of different things. I started a small animal clinic, dogs and cats. Love that. Talk about easy. You're not out in the cold and mud and blood and guts. And then in 1999, I felt this calling back to livestock. There's so much suffering and inappropriate rearing of livestock. I thought I got to get back into this. I got to see what I can do to help this paradigm shift back to what we do now. In 2000 something, 22 years ago, I was hired by Thousand Hills Cattle Company to start up. This was a 100% grass-fed beef operation. We decided we were going to kill 40 a week. That's 2,000 a year, and that would be a $4 million business. Well, now Thousand Hills is up to killing. Right, we try to kill 350 head a week, which is it's still David and Goliath. We're still a tiny little thing compared to Cargill and Conagra and all the armor, all the big plants. They may kill that many before the first coffee break in the first day of January, So we're still small, but it's very thrilling to be involved with grass-fed beef because I get to go out on farms now, and I've been on every one of our 60-some producers every year to make sure they're following our protocol. I wrote a protocol for Thousand Hills 22 years ago. It's still in effect. No grain ever, no antibiotics, no hormones. We have a pretty tough, pretty strict protocol. And it's been a joy to go on those farms. And that's what I do now. And I do a consulting business where I can, I've been on, Thousand Hills has farm producers in 39 states. So I get to see East Coast, West Coast, South, North. I pretty much I don't necessarily have to go to your farm to figure out what you might need to do for your cattle. And there's exceptions to everything, but I can give you, let's say you were a starting out producer. That's my favorite thing to do is when people want to get started, they can learn. There were pioneers before Thousand Hills. They always say you can tell the pioneers by the arrows in their back. And what you're talking about is kissing a lot of frogs, making a lot of mistakes, and taking a ziggy-zaggy tour to get to the goal line. But we can clip years off of that and thousands of dollars off of that. But so just do what works. A lot of people my age would be playing golf and wearing stupid pants right now, but I feel like I'm at the top of my game. Why would I quit now when I've finally figured out stuff that used to vex me?
The pants are still stupid, okay?
That's because I'm not going outside. But yeah, I feel like I am not afraid of anything. Fear dominates medicine, you might say. That's how they sell you vaccines, how they sell you worming products, chemical wormers. That's how you sell you antibiotics, is put the fear of God in you that, oh, boogeyman's going to get you. You better get vaxxed up. And so now, since 99, I have never used any vaccine, any chemical warmers, or any antibiotics. And at first, that was a little scary to cross that bridge. Now I have something that's better. So I don't have any fear of the so-called deadly diseases, brucellosis, anaplasmosis, all of the fearful things. I'm not a big fan of the germ theory. In fact, I don't believe in the germ theory at all. What I follow is your immune system, is strengthening your immune system. Then you don't have to even think about germs. But if you talk to people, when I get a phone call, they go, "Hey, what you got for pink eye?" Or "What you got for foot rot? What you got for mastitis?" And kind of like the drug companies, big pharma, put that into people's heads. That you wait till you have an accident, get on the phone, get out here. I got mastitis, and then what do you throw at it? And
Yeah.
then a lot of people misunderstand when I call myself a holistic vet. They think you treat the same, you do things the same way, but you throw an herb at it or a vitamin or something. So it's that wait till they're sick and then dig out your silver bullet and as if there were such a thing and treat it. So once we get people set up with a good management plan, a good nutritional plan, a good breeding plan, they don't need a vet. And that's kind of like my on my website it says the three biggest parasites on a farm are bankers, government people, and veterinarians. And I'm trying to get this spray that you get these three parasites off your farm. So really, I think that's the goal, is to not ever need a vet.
Yeah, well, that's an amazing goal. What's before we get into all the I mean, first of all, would you say it's fair to say that cattle just captured you? Because I always say cattle like captured me. I can't.
Well, no, it's funny. I have sheep and goats. I
Oh
love
yeah.
small ruminants, and I love pigs. I never loved pigs until I got some, and I got some Berkshires, and they have the stubby little noses and the cute faces, and they're roundy, and they're just like puppy dogs, just like your dog. They follow you anywhere, and granted, they could kill you too. That's
They
one
might eat
difference.
you.
Yeah, you never trust a big boar or a mama sow when she's got babies. But and of course, cattle is a no-brainer. You gotta love them. The happiest day in my career is when I'm out in the pasture, summer day, and you can hear them pulling up the grass and eating it, and your heart rate and your blood pressure just goes right down, and you don't want to leave. That's the hardest thing, is leaving that pasture with those grass-fed animals.
Yeah,
And
it's a
it's not that I
meditation.
wouldn't work in a feedlot or a confinement animal facility, but I'll be getting the propaganda at them to get a real job, get a real life, let those animals go. And because it's awful. I worked on one big pig operation a couple of years ago. The people just broke my heart. There's a father and four sons, so five families from one hog operation, and they called me. They'd had PED, they'd had PERS, they had it all, and they were going broke. They were desperate, and that's what happens when you have. I think they had 40,000 animals under in confinement on concrete. And I said, well, I don't think you want me because I'm a holistic vet. I don't use any drugs. They said, no, that's why we called you. So I went out there and I wanted to see the operation. So I had to go through three locked perimeter fences or gates, take off all my clothes, cover myself with disinfectant, take a shower. You had to scrub with disinfectant. Then you put on a moon suit, rubber boots, gloves, a respirator, earplugs, hat, and you're walking around. And this was they had 2,400 sows, You can see cages, confinement cages, 100 sows, and then imagine another 100, then another 100, 2,400 sows. And it was like I died and went to hell for me. The screaming, they're miserable. The smell stayed on me for days, even though I had all this the suits on and moon suits and everything. I couldn't get that smell out of my body. I was breathing a respirator the whole time. And we actually had some headway. I talked them into going down to 400 sows, bring back some of the farmed out nurseries and things like that. And now they're making more money on 400 sows that are actually outdoors than they were making with 2,400 sows.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
What
that's
was
the kind of.
what was all the disinfectant suit for? Is it for you or for the animals?
There's a sign on the first gate that says "No germs in, no germs out." And confinement people, they've sworn to me that there was a truck going down the road and some germs fell off and it went into their hogs. That's how phobic people are about germs. And and they won't let you go. There's no way anybody could walk into that place and just look around.
Yeah.
There's no visitation, and they certainly wouldn't let you go in there because you might bring in a germ. Well, you would bring in a germ. And if one germ got in that housing facility, everything would die because they have no immune system and they're on GMO, horrible feed. They're miserable. They want to die.
What were their daily losses? Like percent wise, how many animals would they lose a day?
When I met them, they were losing hundreds a day. They had PED, pigs everywhere dead, I call it. So they were losing hundreds. And then after I walked on the place, they were open to a suggestion. Then the next day they lost, I don't know, 20 some piggies. It affects baby pigs. And second day they lost about 15. And it was going down, but he said, I thought you said this would work. And I said, man, when I met you, you were falling off a cliff. And we put the brakes on that, but you're still going to go down a little further till we get you going back up. And he said, okay. So thank God, it was the next day. It was like 3 baby pigs dead, and then we didn't have anything dead for a long time. So they, like I say, they were on the road to ruination. They were going to go broke, and I don't think modern medicine would have saved them. I think they would have died like so many other operations do. And I can tell you the same stories about livestock. I had a guy call me. He bought some Rhodocala Devons that were out in Wyoming, and they were dying of anaplasmosis. And he lives in New York, so he was going to take them to New York. Well, New York won't allow an anaplasm positive animal to come to New York. It's illegal. So he called me in again. I said, I have to warn people. I said, I'm a holistic vet. I don't use vaccines and stuff. They, yeah. That's why I called you. So I go out to Wyoming, and which is prairie, and the Rhodocala Devons are from England. They have grass up to here, green grass. You go out to Wyoming, it's like, oh, there's a blade of grass. Oh yeah, over there. And it's harsh climate and hot or freezing cold or broiling hot, and wind blowing all the time, 100 miles an hour. So they all picked up anaplasmosis. So I talked to the rancher, was kind of a Marlboro man, and we're riding around his pickup, and I ruined a good hat hitting on the top of the pickup. So the old Marlboro man's got a cigarette hanging off, and he says, he's driving along, he says, well, let me tell you something, son. I'm like, whew, it's been a long time since anybody called me son. He said, my great-grandpappy homesteaded this here land, and I reckon you're going to give some of them vitamins and stuff. And I said, well, yeah, I've been known to do that. I didn't want to irritate him. I'm working for the New York guy. He said, yeah, he said, when he homesteaded this, we didn't see no Injuns out there giving them buffalo vitamins, and they did just fine. And I'm dying, it's like you're killing me here, man, and biting my tongue off, because the buffalo migrate and the elk migrate. They go to mineral licks, they go to salt licks. That mineral was never in that Wyoming soil. They had to move around. Plus, Grandpappy and his pappy and him have taken 150 calf crops off. So if there was a mineral there, it's long gone. So I put some stuff in the water, some humates and some vitamin C. I injected them with multimin 90 and vitamin A and D. he said, well, you can send your crap out here, but I'll guarantee you they won't eat your minerals. I know, oh, this guy's not going to give my stuff. So I went into Gillette. There was a woman vet there, and I talked to her, and I said, could I pay you your hourly wage to go out to this ranch and give my stuff? She said, absolutely. We don't know anything about anaplasmosis, and antibiotics don't work very well for anaplasmosis. So we'd like to learn what you do. I said, great. So her and her husband, who's a vet, went out there, and the first call I got, she said, you like to got my husband killed. And I said, oh my God, did the rancher get him? And because he was not a happy guy. And he said, no. She said, well, he was carrying a bag of your minerals out there, and the cows pulled it off his shoulder, and they ate the bag and everything. They were starved, and they ate bag after bag. She said he's getting a hernia hauling minerals out there. This is 860 head of cattle. So in a month, we tested them. They called me in September, and we had to get them to New York before it started snowing. So in November, we blood tested them. All but 135 tested negative for anaplasmosis, the incurable disease. Shipped them to New York, gave those other guys another round of vitamins. Then we got it down to 35 that didn't test negative and shipped them to New York. The 35 I resold to Texas, but it was for pennies. We got this incurable disease turned around. It's another case where they were in the wrong climate. They were not getting any they had a salt block every 15 miles out there, a weight salt block. So they were just mineral deprived and stressed out, and they were in a climate that they're not designed to be in. New York, they get to New York and grass is up to here. It's beautiful. The herd is doing fantastic now. Their fertility is off the chart. So those are the kind of extreme situations that I see. Most people are homesteaders right now. And that's the nice thing about Acres. We're going to catch this homesteader crowd because they want to get started, and God bless them, they should get started. It's a great way to raise your children. It's a great way to be in nature. It's a great way to save the planet. So I love working with, they got 6 head of cattle, or they got 2 milk cows, and they're selling raw milk. Bravo. So this is the new frontier, I think, for us is homesteaders.
Yeah.
They're gonna, I think, turn our country around because we're losing farms like crazy. Where you are here, they've lost what 80% of the dairies in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, and I think cattle provide an opportunity for homesteaders to have cattle, but then also keep their day jobs.
They sure do. And actually, another thing I like about working with small ruminants, I have sheep and goats, is if they lose one of those cows, you're looking at $2,000, $4,000. Boom, gone. Break your heart. You lose a ewe, well, it's just a bad day.
Yeah.
It's not, it's $400. So it's a lot easier to get started with ruminants, the small ruminants. And I try to get them as soon as possible go into multi-species grazing. Run your sheep right behind your cattle, and maybe you can run goats there too. You got to be a little bit insane to have goats, by the way. I don't recommend goats universally unless you're already crazy. Because if you're not, the goats will make you crazy.
Our neighbor has them, and I see them grazing in the cornfield and alfalfa field all the time. I mean, they're out every day.
Yeah, yeah. They don't understand the concept of a fence.
No.
What are you talking about?
But people are doing a lot of cool stuff with them, getting them trained to electric netting and having success
I have
with
electromesh netting, and mine are trained to woven wire fences, electromesh, to the extent that you can.
Yeah.
They will risk getting buzzed by a hot wire to get on the other side. They don't care. It's worth it to them.
Yeah.
To go right under.
But you see, if you keep them moving, they won't test the wire as much.
Well, here's what I do. I do invasive weed eradication. Actually, not far from you here near Baraboo, and we're on our old ammo dump, 7,000 acres, and in your area, you can hear the weeds growing. It's that violent out here. So I'm going backwards. I don't have enough animals right now to keep up with it. But boy, they can tear it up. If I have a wonderful slide decks for sheep and goats, but you show this jungle of brush. You got every kind of brush. You couldn't even walk into it. It'd be like walking through a concrete wall. And then 2 days later, it's just naked little sticks, everywhere. But what we have to do is let them tear it up, destroy it, take them off, let the plants regrow, and plants love this. They tiller, they get all this new lovely growth. Then we put them back in again, and they hammer it. Then we take them off. So this is all controlled. Then the third time, there's just not enough storage in the root ball to regenerate, so you've intentionally overgrazed it to kill the plants, and so it's a lot of control. So they're not always in happy, lush stuff. Sometimes they're picking the little remnants, but
But that's what goats are perfect for.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
When
we need them here. We have that woods is full of buckthorn.
buckthorn they love buckthorn. That's like a great salad for them. And when I see a field like that, I go, "Oh, you got a goat deficiency here. Did you know that?"
That's true. We definitely have that. Right now we've used pigs in the woods to clear out the understory and then come through in the fall and chop the buckthorn off at the base. But
So with your goats clearing out invasives, do you have a issue sometimes going in at the first time? Because I know Will Harris down in Georgia, sometimes he says they won't really go in and won't really hit it unless he like mows strips or knocks it down in there. Then they kind of poke at it from the sides.
Yeah, and I've worked with Will Harris at White Oak Pastures, and it was kind of an uphill battle to convert a cattleman to multi-species. He was like, "I ain't getting no sheep out here." He said a little slower than that.
That's right.
But he does videotapes of how wonderful it is, and he does everything like Taylor. He does everything in a big way. So he said, "Okay, I'll get 1,000 ewes and put them in there.
yeah,
and I'll get 1,000 does and put them in there." But he makes money on the sheep and goats, and that area is a lot of rainfall. They get 60, 70 inches of rain, so the weeds grow, and the fields are all shot. They're cotton and tobacco and peanuts. You think corn and beans are bad on soil? You should see what those crops do, especially peanuts. So it's a lot of it won't even grow a weed, but when it does, he is extremely happy with those small ruminants. I work with a guy in North Carolina, and he's an artist, and he bought all this land because in North Carolina, that's where our furniture used to come from. The people out there, that's a vertical industry. They have their own sawmills, they have their own kilns, they have their own making plants. That all tanked when all the business went to Asia. So you got where there used to be a sawmill every half mile, there's a meth lab. You got all these unemployed people running around, and they used to keep the forest thinned out to just the hardwoods. Now it's junk. So when this guy hired me out there, I said, "Well, here's what we need to do. This is Stonehouse Farms. This is a really great place in North Carolina, near Asheville." I said, "You need to get you some hogs out here." And he laughed for about 20 minutes because North Carolina is a hog state, but it's all confinement hogs. I said, "No, I'm talking about forest hogs." So we did that. We cleaned out the understory. Once we got the shade canopy off of it, boom, all these warm season, cool season grasses come up. And when you see these pastures out there, you'd swear it's been a golf course or been pastures forever because it's so lush. Because you can't farm it normally because it's like this area around Viroqua. It's all super hilly and vertical. Well, that's why we had to be careful with the forest hogs, because if you overgraze it, you're going to have mudslides, and you lose what little precious soil they have. But that was a successful use of hogs, and that's what hogs are designed to do. They have a plow on their nose for a reason, and they love that. They're getting those grubs, they're getting the roots, and they're getting all that stuff. And the most expensive meat in the world comes from Spain, where they have Serrano hogs, which are acorn hogs. And acorn pork is, well, if a ham costs $4,000, it's probably a pretty darn good ham. And those are from acorn forest hogs.
Well, geez, we should get some of those at your place then.
I used to do them. Not the actual breed, though. Actually, Will had some of the Iberian blacks.
Oh yeah, that's what.
He may still have some.
Will
Yeah, he
Harris.
does. And he planted some other kind of nut tree. Remember that he planted. This is Will Harris again.
Yeah.
He planted several thousand nut trees. And you know what kind of trees they are.
I don't remember. I know he had some chestnuts going, lots of pecans, obviously white oaks.
Yeah.
White oaks.
No, these are other nut trees.
Yeah, I think he mentioned it in our podcast.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember what it was.
that is a place everybody should go visit. Everybody that wants to learn something should go. And you had him here. And if you look at his podcast, one of them is 100,000 Beating Hearts.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
That's a great podcast because it explains the changes he did growing up a hardcore redneck, and he admits it. And he's 180 degrees away from that now. He's one of the most generous, acceptant people that.
And I think he's probably the best habitat manager that I've seen in North America.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He just wants more land.
He's doing it with the livestock.
Yeah. Oh, that's what he says. And there's only way you can redeem that land other than dumping tens of thousands of dollars on it with artificial fertilizer, which wouldn't last, whereas this lasts. And he says the chickens are the only operation that he has that he doesn't make money on right off the top. But he said, I'll always have chickens because they're my soil health professionals. And wherever those chicken tractors have been and those egg mobiles, you can see green stuff coming back on barren red land.
So with the cattle, you talked about the remineralization process. You want to go through kind of what I'm sure it's not just a blanket, but what's the process?
Well, you can start with a blanket because there's four things actually, that I'll recommend. Not everybody does what you say. As a consultant, you might get 25%, 50%. And I call these people butters. They'll say, yeah, but I'm in Iowa, and I don't know if nobody does this around here, and there's peer pressure like crazy. Joel Salatin, his neighbors call him the lunatic. And he's a multimillionaire. He's paid for his farm, gave it to his kids. He's got this beautiful, lush farm. And he ended up, he started out with just rocks. It was a rock farm. So he didn't, they'll say, oh yeah, well, he had all the good land over there. And you'll hear that, oh, well, the rain always falls on Taylor's place. You'll hear things like that. So it's an uphill battle. You gotta be a pioneer. You gotta have a strong will to be different than your neighbors. But so here's what I'll tell people. And I'll tell you, I had one guy when I first started at Thousand Hills. He was 22 years old, had just graduated from ag school, and he came from a corn and bean farm in southern Minnesota. And he hired me, and he said, yeah, I want to raise grass-fed beef. And he told his dad that. His dad has spent his whole life having one of the top corn and bean farms in southern Minnesota. It's precious, priceless. And when he told his dad, Dad, I want to grow grass, that to a corn and bean guy, that's like saying I want to raise, I don't know, Tasmanian devils or something. It's just crazy. And his dad didn't die of a heart attack on the spot, which is a miracle. And this kid did 100% of what I told him. And then in the first year he was in the black, and the second year he started paying his dad for the farm. He said, "No, son, I gave it to you." He said, "No, Dad, I want to pay you. This is like $12,000 an acre land back then. Probably a lot more than that now." So he's paid off his original 1,200 acres that he started on. He's ranching 3,800 acres now. He's in his 30s. He's married, got kids on the ground, and he's probably a millionaire. Because he started, in my opinion, he started out right. We got the right kind of cattle. We figured out the right kind of grazing for him. And, the rest was just him following the blueprint. So what I do is I recommend everybody start with an all-in-one mineral vitamin. And there are not very many good ones. They can call me and I can tell you exactly whether it's good or not. And the reason I know that, I put ads in Acres one time because I had a guy ship me he called me up and he said, "What do you think of Billy Bob's minerals?" And I never heard of them. Cut that label off. This is before cell phones had cameras, and send it to me and I'll tell you what's in it. Because I am a nutritionist. That was my first degree, livestock nutrition. So I look at this label and it's like 44% salt, white salt, and the rest of it is DDGs, dried distiller's grain, which is garbage. It's GMO, toxic garbage with fungicides in it and antibiotics, and it's basically free. And then just a little spit of Chinese minerals so they could legally call it that. And I called the guy up and I said, "What do you like about this?" And he said, "Well, $31 a bag," meaning to him it was cheap. I didn't tell him this, but I could make that all day long for $1 a bag. Salt's 50 cents a bag. DDGs, they pay you to take that crap. and Chinese minerals are cheap. So, but of course, the wheels are falling off his herd, from they didn't have any nutrition. So I was thinking, how do they get away with selling junk like this? Well, farmers don't ever go to the cause behind the cause behind the cause. They think a germ got them. Yeah, of course I got mastitis. I brought these heifers in that carried it, and they don't realize if they had the immune system that you can bring all the germs you want. I let people play with my pigs and bring your kids, play with the pigs. I'm not phobic about that. So then I put ads in Acres Magazine and Stockman Grass Farmer, like, got to be careful what you ask for, because I said I'll give anybody a free analysis of your minerals. I had a flood. I had like 1,200 right off the bat. So I looked at all these and I grade them like a school teacher. These are all livestock minerals, like let's say Purina, Wind and Rain, and which I've looked at. A lot of them are repeats, but about 1,000 different ones. And I grade them like a school teacher, A, B, C, D, F. They were all D's and F's. And that's how they get away with it. The farmer doesn't realize it's garbage because they don't know how to read the lines on the label. They don't know how to read between the lines. So at the time, this is about 15 years ago, I thought, well, I can't find anything that's an A plus. Well, it must be too expensive. So I outlined what I thought is an A plus mineral. No corners cut, nothing from China, nothing from India. Top of the top of the top. It must be $200 or $300 a bag. You know what it was? $40 a bag to make the top, and they're not doing it.
Was
That's
this hard to source it, or why wouldn't they?
You tell me.
Because they're making the other stuff for a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's inside the bag, $40 in the bag. The Purina Wind and Rain's $1 in the bag. You're paying for all the CEO pensions and payment plan. All the your there's all these people taking a little cut all the way to you getting it. So then I started selling it, and then I don't like selling stuff. I'm not a good businessman. I'm not a good shopkeeper. So finally, Thousand Hills bought my company, which was at the time Grass Farmer Supply. Now they call it Holistic Livestock something. But so I can help people get whatever they have. First of all, I'll do an analysis off of the label and see if it's any good. I'm hoping I find one, and I'll recommend it to people if I ever find one. I just haven't found one yet. I found a couple C's, but the rest were D's and F's. So I recommend a good all-in-one mineral. There's no salt in your mineral. Salt will destroy your chelated minerals, and the ratio is locked in. So on a hot summer day, they're going to want more salt, but then to do so, they'd have to eat more mineral, wasting it. Or some days, if they're pregnant or weather stress or any kind of stress shipping, they want more mineral. But if the salt's in it, it'd be like a half a cup of salt on your hamburger. You couldn't eat it. So I unmarry those two. So one hopper is mineral, one is salt. And then the third thing I like to give, there's so much pollution on farms now. It's in the water, it's in the air, it's in the soil. I use a detox clay like a montmorillonite or bentonite or zeolite. And when they eat that, it takes away heavy metals, it takes away pesticides, it takes away stuff that might be in your water, which is in your water. And that's the other thing I do with a new client is like, what'd you find on your water test? Oh, we haven't done. Oh, yeah. Well, you got to get your water tested right way. If it's well water, if it's coming downstream from somebody else upstream, find out what's in your water because it's bad pretty much everywhere. You guys are like me in Minnesota. We have iron in our water, and iron will tie up your copper and zinc. And copper is your wormer, and zinc is for all your membranes and calving and all that. So you got to find out if you have iron. I was talking to a guy in Missouri last night, and he has sulfur in his water, and it's killing his cattle. So anyway, the clay mitigates that. Then the fourth thing, which is optional, I recommend apple cider vinegar, and that would be really good for you up here. Apple cider vinegar, really good apple cider vinegar will, first of all, cut 20% off your minimum, 20% off your feed bill, because what it does in the ruminant, this is for ruminants, it stimulates the cellulosic bacteria in the rumen to break down cellulose. This is cellulose. No, it's not.
It's
Wood. Cellulose is wood. It won't digest that coffee table. But it will enable you to digest wood. And I can go out, one of the first things I look at on a farm is the manure. And if that manure is all stacked up like horse manure, that is fiber. There's sticks in it. And that means your animals don't have a grass rumen. They can't digest grass. So the minute you start digesting cellulose, cellulose is a sugar because it ends in OSE, but it's a long chain hydrocarbon. You can't break it down. We can't, pigs can't, chickens can't, horses can barely break it down. They don't have a rumen. So the vinegar does that. For pigs, chickens, and horses, I recommend apple cider vinegar because if they're grain eaters, and University of Wisconsin did a great study for their floury endosperm corn they made. It's the opposite of hard flint corn. This stuff you can almost pinch it. It's so soft. But they have some electron microscope pictures on their website, University of Wisconsin, where they poured some acetic acid, which is basically vinegar, on the corn, and it digested the protein, the prolamine, which looked like peanut butter under the microscope. And then there's all these little balls of starch. So the vinegar releases that starch. And your probably the thing I should have said before I said my name was, what's your limiting factor in livestock production? It's always energy. You're always energy. It's never protein. People are upset. They're getting these protein blocks and all that. You're not going to be protein deficient. You're going to be energy deficient. And if you can break down starch, if you can break down cellulose, if you can digest properly, you're going to make money. You're going to be able to fatten your cattle. And the hardest thing, 80-90% of the farmers that have cattle, they couldn't fatten them in 100 years they'd be walking around all crippled up with a walker, before they got fat because they don't have enough energy. The bricks level in their forages. I worked on a farm 10 miles from here, and they bought some corn and bean ground, and they were converting it to pasture, which you're doing. The healthiest weed I saw, that was the only thing that was there was weeds, was the bricks of 3. That's a nothing burger. There ain't nothing there. They can eat 100 pounds to 500 pounds a day, and they're still going to lose weight because it doesn't have any energy in it. So so the vinegar does that for you. It's the only thing I've ever worked with that pays you to give it. It pays you. The return on investment ROI is probably 2 to 3.
How do you give it to them?
Well, the short answer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because I've seen people soak it in their bales or.
Sure, that's the easy way, and you want to find the easiest way, and that's what I've done with the sheep and goats. If I've got 100 sheep and goats in a pen for the winter, which is when we feed hay, I'll take a half an ounce per head. So for 100 goats, let's say I'm putting 130 ounces in there. Put it right on the hay where it won't run on the ground. You're done.
How much would you put on a bale then? Sorry.
I would put, in that case, if I have 100 of them out there, I want a half an ounce per head. So that's what I actually do. The math I was doing there, I put 3 days worth. So 150 ounces of vinegar, a little over a gallon of vinegar on there every 3 days on the bale. That's a round bale.
I think Dan Kittredge was doing some testing where they were actually dunking bales in apple cider vinegar and wrapping them.
And you're right. And if you really want to get ahead of the curve, we like to spray the hay when it's in a windrow. And you can bale 25% moisture hay and not get a speck of mold or heat if you spray the windrow with 3 gallons per ton. So then it's rolled up in your bale. You don't need to mess around with it. And your hay that's why they call it hay conditioner. There's a tank on most balers of propionate acid, which is a chemical cousin of acetic acid, not as good. But so we just don't fill it up with hay conditioner. We fill it up with vinegar. All these hay jockeys are doing it around here now, selling vinegar hay for $35 a ton extra. And it's worth every penny because it's not moldy. And mold is one of the 3 top killers of dairy cows is mold. And we have this fusarium mold that's called the Midwest mold. And all the corn, especially GMO corn, is loaded with that mold. And mold is so toxic to you. It's not like aspergillus mold, which has an aflatoxin that just kills you dead. Fusarium mold kills you slowly. It gives you AIDS. It gives you no immune system, so you get pink eye, foot rot, mastitis. You can never keep up with it if you got moldy feed. So that's one advantage right off the top. Horses that get, I don't know if any of your Amish listeners will get this tape, but if you give a horse vinegar every day, you'll never have any bloat, colic, or founder. And somebody may prove me wrong someday, but in 20 years, I haven't seen one.
So have you ever used apple cider vinegar on any livestock?
Yep.
My
put it in
biggest
the
issue
water,
is sourcing it.
You made it, haven't you?
like by the
Oh
thousands of
yeah,
gallons.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
My issue is always sourcing it. I think I've always come across the website you were talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
Steve Campbell is the guy to get it from. He's from Golden Valley Vinegar in Fruitland, Idaho, and he has at least 3 people in Wisconsin that are distributors.
okay.
And he'll give you a list of who's the closest guy. Farmers are also handicapped by the fact that they're afraid of shipping. And we have guys that'll get up before the sun comes up, get in their pickup, drive for hours, get a hernia load and a ton of minerals, and get home after dark to save $100. It's not logical, but it's this deal of like I'd rather die than pay $1 for shipping.
Yeah.
So
Before we move away from the minerals, we have cafeteria style mineral feeders. So we
Okay.
have the 20 different individual minerals. What's your thought on those? I think for us, what we've seen, but I'm not doing everything that you're doing. I see it make a big difference in the summer for flies, and then in the winter with
there's two versions of cafeteria style, and they used to be partners. Jim Helfter had the Bader family was part of his partnership, and I was a good friend of Jim Helfter before he died. Mr. Bader and his son Mark Bader died too, but they were the founders of Free Choice Feeding, the cafeteria style.
Well,
And
was it Free Choice Enterprises?
yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah, that's just
That was
down
the
the
Bader
road.
family. Yeah. They took the low road, in my opinion. Jim Helfter took the high road and stayed with non-Chinese, non-Indian stuff. So, but anyway, either one I don't do anymore. And when I first started at Thousand Hills, I was gung-ho. Everybody has to do cafeteria style. So you got to drag this mineral sled around that's bigger than this
Yeah,
couch.
that's the problem so I noticed the difference in it because we had the whole operation was essentially done by hand. You just open a gate every day,
Yep.
move the mineral feeder, move the water. When we got that,
Yep.
then you have to bring a UTV out,
Yeah,
and
do.
it would get left behind. But I would notice
Yep.
issues would start happening if it got left behind too long.
Well, that's what happened to me. It was a train wreck for me at Thousand Hills, and everybody hated my guts because you gotta have a barn this big to carry 12 to 18 SKUs of product.
Yeah.
You don't know which one to carry out there because sometimes they might be hitting the selenium, sometimes the copper, so you don't know which one to bring out. I've had big problems. I go out to the farm. I said, "Oh, you can't be having problems on cafeteria style." Yeah, they've all got lice. They got this. They got that. So I go out there and like the copper bin will be empty, and it's so empty so long they've even eaten the plywood.
Yeah.
That happens. I get it. It happens to me sometimes. It's
so I don't
annoying because then
recommend
you end up ordering like 1 or 2 at a time, and
Yep. And they tell you it's cheaper. It ain't cheaper. It's more expensive. And plus, they're 98% wheat mids or rice hulls. Who wants to pay shipping costs to ship filler around? The stuff that's in it, whatever you want, the mineral, zinc, whatever, they're very nasty, very bitter. So they got to have a lot of filler in it. So I do not recommend cafeteria style feeding. I do the all-in-one. In theory, it was brilliant. If they need selenium, that's all they eat. That's a great theory. In the real world, it don't work. And I've proven it.
yeah.
So just get a good all-in-one mineral, get a good clay, and I use C90 sea salt. I love C90. It's 24% mineral. So it actually cuts your mineral bill way down, whereas Redmond's or Kansas Gray or some of those, they're 4 or 5% mineral, non-sodium chloride mineral.
Are you big with the garlic salt?
Yeah, I think garlic's a great idea. You may not need garlic. Once you get your animals healthy and mineralized and well nourished, you're not going to have parasites. But most people still have parasites, and they'll dump anything on it. I have to laugh. When I was a kid, my family with cattle, we would use tractor oil. And we would change the tractor oil every 25 years, whether it needed it or not, So you got this bucket of plutonium, and we would pour it down the backs of the cattle, and then we would eat those cattle, So I might have lost a few brain cells growing up.
I got a question back to you on your use of the cafeteria style mineral. Do you notice something that they hit regularly, or do they switch it up and change?
No, there'll be things that I know you've always talked about. You think they pick their candy out.
Phosphorus, probably.
Phosphorus in the winter,
For sure.
big time, and they don't hit it as much in the summer. And then summer is different than right now.
You know what phosphorus does? Why they want it? Phosphorus runs.
I was assuming it wasn't in the hay bales I buy, but
It's not.
Yeah.
Phosphorus is expensive. That's why a lot of the cheaper minerals will be 12 to 1, 5 to 1, 3 to 1 calcium to phosphorus. A good mineral is 1 to 1. It has phosphorus in it because phosphorus runs the Krebs cycle. That's your energy the motor. That's the motor of cells. ADP to ATP phosphorylates. So you need that phosphorus to make energy in your cells, in your liver, in your mitochondria.
Yeah.
The reason why I was asking also, because, way back when, Gary Zimmer's right down the road, so I've, been in communication with him more often than anybody else.
Yeah.
And he basically said, oh yeah, do your soil mineral test first and put that mineral out for them free choice. So you watch, they'll hit that over and over again.
Sure,
So
they will.
when I was doing the feed bunk of all the different minerals, sure enough, phosphorus was what they were going for. That was our biggest, the calcium phosphorus.
But why do you think they don't hit it as much in the summer? Because they definitely hit it a lot in the winter.
Well, grass in the summer has spring grass is real that washy stuff. What do they get? They get the squirts, right?
Yeah.
That's because it has a lot of funny protein in it. Early grass has non-protein nitrogen, NPN, and it's low Brix. Brix and NPN are like this. So that grass has a lot of phosphorus in it, but it doesn't have a lot of Brix in it. It doesn't have a lot of energy because it's a growing plant. We want to eat plants that are vegetative. We don't want them going to reproductive style, and that's what you'll do with your rotational grazing out here. You never let your plants get mature, seed out, if possible. You want to hit them when they're still in the vegetative stage. You want to capture. That's when they're the most nutritious.
Yeah.
But early grass is just dangerous. It's just like gasoline. It's too hot on the gut, so they move it out. It's going out in a hurry, and they're not getting much out of it.
So would you recommend moving them slower in the spring or faster?
Well, you gotta do what Alan Williams says. You gotta do adaptive grazing. You gotta use your eyeballs. That's why only 1 or 2% of cattlemen can do grass fed. They don't watch their grass. They let it go too far. The last 2 years, I had people that were babying their grass. They were holding on to it because they just come out of a drought. The last 2 years in Wisconsin, they ended up letting all their pastures went to seed. And I said, man, you should have cut it. You should have baled it. If you don't have enough cattle to get in there when it's starting to head out, you got to bale it. You got to keep in the stage you want it. So if you take a cutting off of it, then it's still vegetative. It's going to come up again, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And then you got some hay.
What we did this year is we didn't get around to a couple sections, and then we let it go. And came back in November and grazed.
That's almost as bad as hitting it too hard, taking all the solar panels off of it. If you hit it too hard, your recovery period has to be 3 times as long.
Yeah.
So it's an art, and I'm not good at it myself. I'm not that guy, but I can tell other people what to do.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard.
So how do people get out of what would you say some of the most overused medications are in conventional cattle farming?
There's 3: vaccine, chemical wormers, and antibiotics.
So
you don't need any vaccine.
Yeah.
Even blackleg. So what I do is
so what do you say about like the blackleg thing is really just
blackleg? Yeah.
I mean, you could be hit by it randomly one year.
It's not random, but yes.
Yeah.
So here's maybe what I should have said before I started talking is you don't want to leave your animals in the lurch. You don't want to pull the crutches away before you got the other stuff in place, because then it's organic by default. It'd be another way of saying it. You have to keep your animals protected at all times. So until you get them mineralized, until you get them well nourished, you don't want to pull any drugs away. And then with the vaccines, I pull away the foo-foo vaccines, pink eye vaccine and stuff like that. That's more foo-foo. Blackleg is actually a very slow-growing clostridial organism related to lumpy jaw, wooden tongue, and tetanus. They're cousins. They're in everybody's farm.
It's in the soil.
It's in the soil. It's a slow-growing bacteria. It's in the soil. You have an open wound from cutting, for castrating, from anything, and they puncture something on their hoof. They could get tetanus or blackleg. But I can assure you that with our 60 producers at Thousand Hills, none of them vaccinate. We don't have any blackleg. We don't have any tetanus. I don't like banding. If I like knife cutting, and I can show anybody how to knife cut in 2 minutes. You'll once you see it, then you do one, see one, do one. You'll always know how to. You can look it up on the internet. But banding is gross. It's cruel. It's amateur. You put a rubber band, and I tell people it's like, oh, they say, oh, banding is more humane. All right, let's put a rubber band around your thumb for a couple of days and see how that feels. So you're creating gangrene. Well, that's where blackleg sets in. And so does tetanus. In fact, the humane there's the organization that does humane livestock rearing. They say knife cutting is cruel. Come watch me do it. The animals like do looking around. They don't even know you did it if you do it right. I would say bad knife cutting is worse than good banding. You can make a lot of mistakes with banding. You can leave one in there, and then you got a bully steer. But that happens a lot. So with blackleg, it's a non-issue when your animals are mineralized. The only people that get blackleg, I will say, I don't think there's any exception to this, are people that don't know anything about mineralization or nutrition. So it's a fear thing, though.
When do you guys cut them?
I don't like to do it right when they're born. I like to get them up on their feet a little bit, so a couple weeks at least. Now, if you're considering whether to keep them as breeding stock, then you can go as long as you want.
Yeah,
I don't like to cut them in fly season. So after I cut them, I spray them with iodine teat dip to keep the flies off of it.
Some people in the grass-fed world are pushing for cutting them at a year now, because they say that if you let that testosterone stay in them, it'll help them get bigger.
It does.
In that year.
It does. They can also breed their sister at a year.
Yeah.
And they can also attack you.
Right.
A year-old bull calf is kind of dangerous. They have that testosterone is working. So I don't have any problem with a year. That's fine. You're going to have a little gamier meat. I work with a guy out in California. He only kills bulls for food. And his place is a mess. He's got 250 bulls out there, and there are fights every day, and there's a big price for that. But the Texans, the Mexicans, they love flavor in their meat. Midwesterners, we like meat that tastes like A1 sauce. We don't like flavor. We're afraid of it. So it's for Thousand Hills, it's a little gamey for our clientele, and they don't want much flavor. So, but a male animal is going to have more flavor. It's good too. I like it up to a certain point.
And then when do you recommend weaning?
Long weaning, no short weaning. We wean at 300 days. And what you're going to get there is an animal that's really ready to go to town once the grass greens up and they're so there's no lurch. I do work with a bison ranch in Wisconsin that they've grown in size more than they can raise, so they're buying baby buffalo from the Dakotas. And these things are short weaned. It's just they're ingrained. You can't pay those people enough money to quit weaning them short. So in buffalo in the wild, they don't have a calf every year. Usually every 2 years, and so they wean off naturally when they're so big their mother's sick of them. And that's the great thing about late weaning. You don't hear any bawling cows. They're like, get him out of here. I'm sick of that calf.
Yeah.
Plus, they got another one inside. So yeah, the short weaning. These calves coming off of the Dakotas, they're looking for a place to die. They're scouring when they come off the truck. They're coughing the next day, and then half of them would die if you didn't have some care for them.
What you talk a lot about the higher bricks in your forage.
Yeah, to finish on grass, you have to have 12 bricks or better average. Yeah.
So what is the process to get your grass to that point?
How many hours have you got? That is your challenge with grass. You have to do that, and the guys that do that are like Gary Zimmer, or you, and you, Taylor. You guys know how to have a plant that has high bricks because it comes from the soil and your management program. And the best way to raise your bricks is appropriate livestock rotation. We can raise bricks from 3 to 9 or 10 in 1 or 2 years with appropriate rotational grazing. It's amazing. Now, when I start a new farm, like maybe some of your old corn and bean ground, the first thing I put out there is biology. I'll do a biological spray, either foliar spray or spray it on the ground to kill the glyphosate. This is probably loaded with glyphosate out there.
Hmm.
And sometimes some of this farmer, I work right in your area all the time. You can't even grow a weed. It's so poisoned with herbicides. So we kill that with biology. And there's a bunch of people in acres. A lot of your sponsors have biologic. I don't care which one they get. Just start with some biology. Don't spend a lot of money throwing fertilizer out there or seed cocktails, because you got to get the soil alive again. The soil is dead out here. So you got to get it alive again. And once you do that, it's a no-brainer. I was working with a herd in Mondovi, not far from here, and they bought some corn and bean ground. The first year I worked with them, we sprayed it really good with biological spray from a nice place called Nature's Best. We sprayed it, and they can do it for $10, $15 an acre. And I kind of jumped the gun. I went to Prairie Creek Seed, where I get a lot of my seed cocktails. They know what to put where, and so that seed cocktail didn't come up. The first year was nothing. It's just weeds. I was hardly getting weeds, and I just couldn't run cattle on it the first year. So I said, just sickle bar mow it down. There's nothing worth saving out here. It's just scraggly stuff. The next year, this is about 3 years ago, it rained in the spring, and we had weeds as tall as your head. You couldn't see over the weeds. So we bought some junk cattle that the guy down the road had, and we threw some cattle in there, and we gave them apple cider vinegar and minerals. They were junk cattle. They were like sale-born quality cattle. And the highest bricks I ever saw was a weed that had 3. And on that particular field, the second year of production, we put them in around the 4th of July, took them out in November as a long growing season. They had gained right at 4 pounds per head per day.
Wow.
Junk cattle, junk soil, junk crops. So I figure anybody that's got gay brown soil and cattle is going to make money. You almost have, you're going to make money. But if you have one of those that's missing, let's say you have animals that aren't grass ruminant animals, or you have low bricks forages, this is going to be a long time before you see the any kind of green. So in this year we gained 4 pounds. They were grass fed. We didn't use any grain. They'd never had any grain. They were, the old guy that raised them was just raising sale barn junk. So we sold them as grass fed. They were grinders. You weren't going to cut a steak out of one, because some of them were dairy cattle, some were continental breeds, but they made really great hamburger, and they sold for way higher than sale barn prices. So that was a lot of money, 4 pounds a day in the summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is what we need to try to get to.
Yeah, on nothing, eating weeds,
Yeah.
nothing.
What are you seeing right now with your producers as far as finishing from birth to finish? What's your goal?
Uh, well, that is hard. Is that our producers that are birth to slaughter don't make as much money as the finishers.
Yeah.
We have people that raise stockers. That's a great way to lose money. If you win the lottery, you can spend it raising stockers. Somebody else is making all the money.
Hmm.
If you're just raising stockers, if you don't have a high enough quality grass to finish cattle, you're just spinning your tires. The birth to slaughter people make medium amount, like 300 to 600 an acre. Averaging, years are different. But we have some people that, let's say they retired and they bought primo land, but they're not farmers. They don't know what to do with it. We can put stockers, 4 weights, 5 weights, 6 weights out there. They will make twice what the birth to slaughter guy will make per acre. They'll make 600 to 900, sometimes $1,000 of profit per acre. So you're making $1,000 per acre per year finishing cattle. So the birth to slaughter people have all the stress, all the headaches of buying bulls, cows that you don't get pregnant, or they're dystocia, they can't calve. You got all that grief, and then someday you'll make some money. And those people, it's like 2 or 3 years before you're going to make any money
Yeah.
if you're birth to slaughter on that animal, because you got all this investment, all this risk, all this weather risk before you even go to town. So it's hard, but admirable, and it's fun. At Thousand Hills, we have one stocker herd that we buy on the road from destocking drought, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and then we finish them here in Minnesota on vinegar, by the way, and low quality like reed canary grass quality hay around St. Cloud area. That herd gains 3 pounds a day in the winter due to the vinegar. And nobody in Minnesota gets 3 pounds a day on grass, I'll guarantee you that, but we do. Some of them go backwards and we're getting a pound a day.
We need to get some vinegar.
Yeah, so you get vinegar, right? That's a no-brainer. That works for everybody. Nobody starts it that doesn't stay on it forever. So 3 pounds a day. The mama cow herd, which Matt Meyer owns, that's his herd. I kind of call it a vanity project because he's building his breed. He's making his own version of Pharaoh cattle, which is great. It's like it gives him a lot of satisfaction. But they eat up a lot of grass. They're cow-calf pairs. Like say we wean at 300 days. But they make money too. It's just a lot more work, and you got to constantly figure out what you're going to do for bulls. You got to constantly make sure you got your fertility up. And I should mention, fertility is getting to be one of the biggest problems coast to coast in America. And in many cases, it's EMF. I brought some instruments for show and tell to show you how to measure if you have EMF. Now, you guys, you look around, there's cell phone towers right around here. You can see them from up here on the hill. If you can see them, you're getting zapped. And that will affect the brain works on electricity, right? And your heart works on electricity. Well, the organs that determine fertility are in your brain. They're the hypothalamus, the pituitary. They tell the ovaries and testicles what to do. And if that electricity is jammed up, if they're getting stray voltage or dirty electricity or EMF, you're going to have fertility problems. And a lot of dairies in this area are down around in the 70% conception rate. You'll go broke at 70% conception. And cattle are more susceptible to EMF than we are. That's why hot wire works for cattle. They're terrified. They weigh 1,200 pounds. They're terrified of a little wire.
Yeah.
So,
Have you had a chance to read Don Huber's recent study about sauerkraut juice?
no, I love Don Huber. I really respect what he does, and he's taught us so much about glyphosate. He calls a spade a spade.
Yeah. Well,
So
they're thinking that by feeding soggy sauerkraut juice, spraying it on fields, that it actually combats the reaction from glyphosate. So how
yeah,
glyphosate lives in the soil for a long time, they were seeing organic producers, put an amendment on at a certain stage of a crop, and the crop would just die because it somehow
yeah.
activated the glyphosate in the soil.
Well, you think about what's in sauerkraut juice? Microbes. That's soil biology. So the microbes can destroy any hydrocarbon. There's no such thing as a forever chemical around proper biology.
Do you think the apple cider vinegar is doing something similar?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's actually the acetic acid is only 6%. That's as strong as you can make it, 60 grain. Beyond that, the bugs quit working. So we use 60 grain vinegar, but the real heavy lifters are the microbes and the enzymes that are in it. The enzymes are potent. And enzymes in any reaction, enzymes are used thousands of times. They're used over and over and over. So a small amount, that's why 4 or 5 ounces of vinegar can treat a 1,000-pound cow, because those three things, the three things, the vinegar, the acetic acid, the microbes, and the enzymes. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And when I said we treat the soil, the first thing I would do on the ear farm here is do a biological spray on it for starters, a good one. And it'll stay there forever unless you kill it. That's the nice thing about biology. The sauerkraut juice will stay there forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll always you're restoring you'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Mark?
As long as you keep feeding it, yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
plow it up and sterilize it again, and it's gone.
Well, yeah, that's right. You can kill it, but it's cheap magic. you know.
And that's like when you first take over a conventional chemical farm, it's going to take you a period of time to get through that, to get that biology established again. Once it's
Right.
established,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to notice it mostly with trees. I used to have to take care of the trees
Mm-hmm.
in order for them to thrive and do well.
Yeah.
Now I can like be walking along and drop one by accident on the
Mm-hmm.
trail,
Mm-hmm.
and it grows.
Yeah.
And that has to do with the biology.
That's why I'm glad Mark's here, because, you know, no one knows everything, you know, and I in my consulting work, I use Gabe Brown, I use all these guys for the areas I'm like Mark, you know, he's an expert on soil and plants. He's a tree hugger. I'm an animal hugger. But you know, you need all those expertise layers. If farmers, you got to be a carpenter, you got to be an electrician, you got to be a plumber. Then you got to be a soil scientist and a plant scientist and an animal scientist. Yeah, it's hard.
So we need more cattle. What
Hmm.
would be your recommendation? One farm that this guy's getting a hold of. It's
Hmm.
a brand new. We're converting conventional fields into pasture.
Hmm.
Would you run cattle on them the first year, or would you amend, seed?
It's a crapshoot. I have and do, and
Yeah,
you probably will and can. Whether it's the most sane thing to do, a lot of it depends. If you happen to have cattle, yeah, definitely. If you find a good deal on some, yeah, definitely. But I wouldn't get in any big hurry. I would see what pops up in the spring.
yeah.
After you, but as soon as it thaws out, then you can do the biological treatment. You might even do a seed cocktail, I don't know, just to get a multi-species growing. There's probably not going to be anything interesting show up. You know, there's probably not a lot of cool season stuff that shows up. Uh, Once these fields are relieved of the burden of growing corn, which is the stupidest plant in the world, they don't know what to do with themselves at first, you know. And the seed bank is there for from the last 500 years. A lot of it's still alive in spite of all the chemical farming. So it'd be interesting to see what shows up. It'd be a lot of thistles, a lot of cuckleburs, a lot of
Velvet leaf, yeah.
pigweed. Yeah.
Here it was red clover and ragweed the first year.
Ragweed. Well, all of those are good, and they make good. Especially you put that litter down on the ground, they make a great. There's a lot of fibrous material that's fantastic for the soil to get it down on the ground. And the way you can do that is cutting it, or you can feed it and run it through the room alchemical process of the room and make it magic fertilizer.
They definitely smack that when it's young
Yeah, yeah, they do.
until it gets mature.
There's nutrition in all of that. And red clover is a nitrogen fixer. So you're going to put some nitrogen back from the red clover, white clover. All of the clovers
Yeah.
are good. You can't, monodiet of clover will kill some of your cattle, you know, with bloat.
Well, that's what I think the ragweed served its purpose that
Mhm.
first year because it was
Yeah, right.
they were getting a little bit of something from that saved me. But
You got volume with ragweed, you know, it's nice. And
yeah,
it's tasty. They do like it.
it's one of the first things they select when it's
Mhm.
young.
So let's just say you're probably not going to finish cattle on that land, but if you got a cow herd, it'd be great for your cow herd. It would be great for putting stockers on it, some sale barn cattle. You can make money on it.
So one of my thoughts for is we're trying to figure out what to do with all this summer pasture.
Yeah.
This is the only place right now that we're gonna have wintered
Mm-hmm.
cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary Zimmer had talked about his daughter will go buy sick cattle and nurse them back to health.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And you kind of explained that same scenario earlier where you buy, I guess, lesser quality type cattle,
Absolutely.
give them these cocktails,
Mm-hmm.
sell them at the end of the year, and
Yeah.
sell good cattle, buy bad cattle, sell good cattle.
Absolutely.
So you feel confident that you could bring in some of the sickest animals. So you go to a sales barn
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
buy the animals that people don't really want.
Not that they're necessarily sick. They're just not necessarily. They're
Yeah.
probably not
Well, like
efficient.
here you have all the dairy crosses
Mm-hmm.
that you can get on a deal.
Yeah.
But I had some one summer and I don't think they did very well.
That's where vinegar and molasses and lassahol come in.
Yeah.
They need boosts. They're inefficient. They were bred to be inefficient. They're bred to be a pig.
Right.
You know, grain eaters. You know, and that's what they think they need. The grass-fed milk movement is increasing now. I'm working with a lot of grass milk farmers that are making grass milk, but they have to have a different kind of cow, and it's usually not a Holstein.
What type of cow are you seeing? Jersey cross or
Yeah, a
Jersey?
lot of Jersey crosses, brown Swiss, a lot of
Yeah.
European breeds that are fantastic. They're smaller animals. They make a very rich milk, very high butter fat milk, high components. They don't eat a lot. They're not a pig, and they have a good rumen. They weren't bred out, and they're A2A2.
I've pondered messing around with jerseys
Mm-hmm.
because I heard people they seek a grass finished Jersey meat for some reason.
Oh,
Have you
it's
heard that before?
delicious. Yeah, it's sweet. It's tender, but small. You got a very small 400-pound carcass.
Yeah.
But as long as you can accept that, they're fine boned. They're fine grained meat. It's not coarse meat like some of the European breeds that were designed to pull a plow or a wagon. So yeah, it's a delicious beef.
Hmm.
Delicious. Some people just choose that for their whole career.
Yeah.
Feeding out dairy steers
On grass.
on grass. Yeah, absolutely. But again, I do recommend an energy supplement like vinegar and or molasses and lassahol, which is fermented molasses, which is a super. It's a rocket fuel, lassahol.
Last thing I wanted to ask you.
Hmm.
You have a long history with Acres USA. What's I guess what was your history with it, and
Yeah,
because you
thank
actually
you.
have a similar background to Charles Walters. Grew up in
Well,
Kansas
yeah, Kansas. He was actually Missouri.
or Missouri.
He's
Okay.
Kansas City, but he and I are not alike. He's a firebrand. He was radical, and I'm more of a coyote. I like to lay in the weeds and do suspicious things. But he was tough, tough, tough. One of the toughest people I ever met, and so he was very admirable, and he could write a book. And the time we've been talking here, he'd have a book written,
Yeah.
and he could bang it out. He was really a productive person. But as he got older, Acres changed, and Fred Walters told me, Fred is his son that took it over, that Acres was actually dying because Charles was actually um, it came off as being negative. He was always talking about what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. And people can only stomach so much of that. They like to hear good news too.
Mm-hmm.
And Charles Walters was not a good news guy. He was like the world is crashing, and he's right.
Yeah, because he had the economic background, and then
Yeah, and he was all about parity for farmers, which I don't even understand. But farmers are getting screwed right and left, and they were in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when Charles Walters created Acres. It was all about how do farmers get paid enough to make an honest living, and it's still a problem today. And I think we need to always have that in mind: is how do people uh, learn to justify paying money for food? People want cheap food, and that's terrible for farmers, terrible for the earth, terrible for our diet. Cheap food is the enemy. So I hope you can do that with that is help people. They'll pay the doctor, but they won't pay the farmer,
yeah,
and we need to get the money back in so farmers get a fair wage for a quality product. In fact, they're disincentivized now. They're incentivized to make cheap stuff you can't even eat. And I loved at the Acres meeting last year, Alan Williams said, to farmers in general, you're not feeding the world. Don't kid yourself. The garbage you're making, the field corn and field soybeans. When's the last time you ever sat down and ate a bowl of field corn? You can't eat it. It's just it's goes in your gas tank and it goes into animals. 80% of it goes into animals. So you're not feeding the world. Don't kid yourself. So if you can do that, then this is where the homesteaders, the young people, anybody that wants to convert corn and beans into food production land. That's where you're living the dream of Charles Walters of what he wanted Acres to be, is a voice of eco-agriculture. That's the subtitle of Acres USA. And I think we just need to stay on that about helping people go into farming. I left my farm family because it was ugly. It was toxic, dangerous, and boring. Riding around in circles on a John Deere, in the sun. And what we're doing now is a beautiful place to raise your children. And Joel Salanoy says your goal for secession is you want to create so much beauty that will seduce your children to come back and live on the farm.
Yeah.
That's it. If you don't do that, if you're like my family, you can't wait to get out of there. You go to town and you make money, you make a living, and you don't have to be out in poison all day and ugliness. So that's what acres can do, like nobody else. You got the history, you got the bones for it, you got the ancestry of the voice of eco agriculture, like nobody else. Nobody else has got that. I get to mention one of my favorite people when you talk my history with acres. Jerry Brunetti got
Yeah.
me going into acres. He pulled me in by the ears and said, "This is where you got to go. You got to be here." And it was for 10, 15 years. Jerry and I, Acres USA was the center of our world. That was our church, and that's where we wanted to be as much as we could be a part of it. And we were fed by you were mentioning of who'd you say
Phil Callahan.
Phil Callahan earlier. We got to meet people like this that are these real gurus, geniuses, and we got to hang out with them, go have a beer with them, and let our hair down and talk. And we weren't getting fed like that anywhere else.
Yeah.
You still aren't. It's malnourished as far as education. And I went to Acres last year, and I was about to give up on it. And I didn't know you came in, and I went to Acres, and I'd been there 5 minutes. It's like, oh my God, the energy's back. I could feel it, and I wasn't even going to have a trade show booth. And I cobbled one together at the last minute. I just happened to have some stuff with me. You happen to have a vacancy. I took it, and I was talking to people. My voice was gone by the time I got back from Acres, just from 2 days. So it's the energy is back, and this is like I say, you inherited kind of a gold mine that was kind of dormant. It was fallow for the last few years because they didn't see the vision of Acres. You do,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell.
Well, I
So there's
appreciate that. I mean,
yeah.
it's sobering to sit and work in an office now and see all of this information because I think it has, I always say the keys to fixing our problems are right here.
hmm Joel Salatin always said he can tell when he goes on a farm whether this guy is going to succeed or not, or gal, by looking at their bookcase.
Oh yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I got a good one then.
yeah, you do. But
I still
and
still need to
this
get
is
through a lot of them.
advice for everybody that is hearing this or coming to Acres: is you buy books
Yeah.
and read them, and don't chew the covers off of them. You got to read them and follow them and get these new ideas and listen to these people that are Alan Williams, Gabe Brown, Will Harris. We've got all these current day geniuses that are telling you exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
Mark Shepard, he's another one. Gary Zimmer.
Well, now we get to go out on our farm and he can pick apart what we're doing because I
Oh,
think
good. Yeah.
there's definitely some things we can improve on just talking to you for the last hour. So
If you work 100% on it, there still will be in 20 years.
yeah,
It's an art.
but it's a dance. It's
Yeah,
it's the
it
game.
really
It's
is.
there's never a perfect.
And my career is the same way. I learn stuff every day, which is amazing when you've been at it for 40 years, that you can still learn stuff every day is out there.
All right, well, we're gonna go bear some cold. Where can people find out more information about you, hire you out for consulting?
WillWinter.com is my website. I'm not a computer guy, so it's a start. There's a lot of my talks and things on there. I'm happy to talk to people. Will Winter DVM at Gmail is my website. People can call me, and I hope they do. I still do consulting. I charge a flat fee of a small amount of money up front, and then I will be your advocate until you get the training wheels off and can go on your own. And I like that's I still love doing that. I love people that don't know anything or they know they don't know stuff. it's kind of interesting with young people, like the guy I told you about in southern Minnesota. He's like, tell me everything and I'll do it, and I didn't have to listen to any yeah buts, and I didn't have to undo bad knowledge. He didn't know anything, and that's I'd actually rather work with somebody like that that's learned everything the wrong way.
Well, I think that's one of my advantage is that I didn't grow up and I didn't have any preconceived ideas. The first ideas of agriculture came in. Luckily, I found this world.
Yeah, you are lucky.
Yeah.
And blessed.
Yeah, because I see the inverse of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So and I find that a lot at Acres, the people come to Acres are coming to learn. They go to the meetings, they read the books, they listen to the podcast. They're wanting to learn.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experiences.